Well, good morning and welcome everyone. I think everyone is in here from the waiting room. My name is Javiera Lagunas-Alvarez, and I am the team program manager at the Boch Center. So on behalf of the Boch Center and the Chamber, we hope you're joining us today, feeling safe and healthy. Today's program is a part of our new Scale Up series. This webinar series engages and enhances Boston's workforce as they manage their work and themselves during COVID-19. Thank you to today's sponsor, the Workforce Training Fund, which helps address business productivity and competitiveness by providing resources to Massachusetts businesses to fund training for current and newly hired employees. We're grateful for your support for this session. As we all navigate through this unprecedented time, many of us are finding ourselves honing new skills to adapt to the virtual world. Well, we are really lucky to be joined by Jessicah, Pierre, and Dr. Stacy Pierre, who will present their best practices for expanding a network remotely. So I want to start with a few notes. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared in the Chamber's YouTube page shortly after the presentation. We hope these sessions are also an opportunity to network. We request that you adjust your screen name by right-clicking on the top right corner of your own video box and click rename to include your first and last name or initial. And the flow of the session will be a mixture of presentation and networking. So to start, our first guest expert, Jessicah, will present for 10 minutes. We'll then split you into breakouts for 10 minutes. We'll return for Stacy's presentation and breakout exercise, which will each last 10 minutes as well. Then we will return for a dynamic Q&A session. So get your questions ready. Please be sure to use the chat function to submit your questions throughout our time together. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce our presenters. Dr. Stacy Pierre is a highly sought after consultant, speaker, trainer, coach, and mentor. She has worked with Fortune 500 companies, top tier universities, nonprofits, and governmental agencies, helping them to build more effective teams and organizational cultures through socially intelligent leadership practices. She's currently a faculty member at Simmons University and is passionate about connecting people to opportunities. I'm a benefactor of Stacy's teaching as participant in the Chamber's Women's Leadership Program, which partners with Simmons University. Also joining us is Jessicah Pierre, who is the founder and CEO of Queen's Company. She's a public relations professional, political blogger, and social entrepreneur. Her overall mission is to get young people and urban professionals to focus more on social issues and less on social media. Thank you both for joining us today. We're lucky to learn from you. And with that, I will hand it off to you, Jessicah.
Thank you so much, Javier, for that amazing introduction. We are going to get right into things. So give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Awesome. Sounds good. So good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm super excited to talk to you all today about expanding your network remotely. I hope you all have a notebook and a pen to take some notes, because Stacy and I are going to be giving you guys some amazing advice on how to navigate building connections and being social during this time while we are all at home. So before we jump right in, I'd like us to really address the elephant in the room. If you're an introvert like me, when you hear the word networking, you kind of cringe a little bit because it has a bad rep. It gets associated with meaningless conversations, forced connections, and it just doesn't seem like a natural process. It seems like something that you have to do even when you don't really want to do it. But I really want to remind you all that networking is what you make it. And in order for us to set the tone, I did want to share some tips that can be applicable whether you're networking in person or whether you're networking virtually. And some of these tips are, number one is to be intentional about the people that you want to connect with. So sometimes that means doing research and really just mapping out the individuals that you know that you want to chat with for a purpose. And it's really important to connect with people in the spirit of collaboration as opposed to just wanting something from someone. So if you know you want to connect with someone and there's something that you want to receive, make sure that you're willing to give as well, so it can be a more mutual connection. My next tip is to block off a few hours this every week to just spend time reaching out to folks. So whether that's 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week, where you know on your schedule, like this is the time that you're going to take to cultivate relationships, then be intentional about that time. My third tip is to be yourself. In order for you to really make some genuine and authentic connections, it's important that you are yourself. You don't need to be anybody else but who you are in order to attract the right individuals to your network. And also be open-minded, because you never know what can come out of a conversation. You never know what connection can kind of lead you to something that's groundbreaking. So it's important to go into networking with an open mind. And then my last tip to kind of help to set the tone is to really get out of your comfort zone. I don't know how many times I've heard within the past few months that we're experiencing unprecedented times. And so now that we're in this era, it's a time for unprecedented actions as well too. Alrighty, now we're all at home now, where most of us are working remotely. We can't really go to in-person events like we would normally do before the pandemic hit. So now it's the time to really get digital and also maximize some of these digital platforms that we're either already using or we already have access to. And this can also be a little bit less intimidating than networking with people in person. However, there's still a science and an art form to expanding your network remotely. And so we'll talk about that today. Alrighty. Like I mentioned before, now is the time to really maximize the digital platforms that you're using. And if you're one of those people that feels a little bit intimidated again by approaching new people online, the tip that I have is that now is the perfect time to reconnect with people that you've already met in person. And so if you've ever needed an excuse to just reach out to folks and you didn't really have any reason why, now is the perfect time to do that, because you can literally just like check in with people. And so I'm going to go into a little bit more detail and talk about some digital tips that you can use to network remotely. Alrighty, so the first one, and probably the most easiest one, is to email or text somebody. Like I mentioned, it's important to just briefly check in with people. You can just say, hey, I thought of you today. I just wanted to check in to see how you and your family are doing. And oftentimes, if it's just a way that you just want to connect with someone, you can even leave an open-ended response and say, hey, you don't need to respond. I just want to let you know that I was thinking of you. And more than likely, that person will respond and you guys will be able to engage. And just keep in mind that networking is a mutual form of contact. So you want to make sure that, as you're checking in on them, that it's a conversation that's a two-way conversation. My next tip is to use FaceTime, or if you don't have an iPhone, whatever video chat function that you have on your phone. There's WhatsApp, there's Google Hangouts. But one thing that I have been doing in order to really cultivate my network and the personal relationships that I have now virtually is that when I know it's somebody's birthday, I FaceTime them, whether I've talked to them a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 3 days ago. I give them a FaceTime call. And it's just my way of being more intentional about cultivating my relationships. And by doing this, I have been able to reconnect with a lot of people that I haven't had the chance to connect with because I either didn't have time or we don't live in the same state. So now setting that rule for myself to say, hey, you know, every time it's somebody's birthday, I'm just going to give them a FaceTime call has been helpful in helping me have some really great conversations with folks, catch up with folks, and even like just show love, because now we're in a situation where like we need love now more than ever. So FaceTime is a more personal way to reach out to people and just connect. My next tip is to get active on social media. And I say that because you don't necessarily have to use social media to reach out to individual folks in your network, but you can be more intentional about the content that you're posting in order to get people to engage with you. And so there's a lot happening in the world right now. You can set yourself apart by posting some positive content to connect with other people, whether it's something funny, something that's lighthearted. And when you're posting on social media, the goal shouldn't be to just get likes. It should be to create a space where people can have discussions and conversations with each other in the comments and connect with one another. So understand that if you have a social media account, you have your own platform in which you can build and connect and cultivate relationships on, while having access to you know, a lot of different people from across the world. And speaking of social media, now's the time to really update your LinkedIn account, especially if you're looking to build your network around your career or your business. LinkedIn is probably the optimal way for you to be able to just update people on what's happening in your business and in your career. So if your LinkedIn account still has an old headline, or you were able to launch a new venture that you were not able to post on LinkedIn, do that now, because when you post on LinkedIn and update your account, it's gonna alert everybody that is connected with you on LinkedIn, and then it'll prompt them to either comment or message you to congratulate you, depending on what your update is. And that's the perfect time to start to connect with people online. My next tip is virtual events. And honestly, guys, I've had to adjust a little bit to virtual events, especially right now. Giving this presentation, I literally have 2 laptops in front of me because I'm sharing my screen with you guys, and I also need to have my notes on the other laptop. So virtual events are a little bit different, and they take some time to adjust. But the good thing about virtual events is that the possibilities are endless. And if you're attending, for example, this webinar or any other type of virtual event, a good way to attract people to connect with you is to edit your name when you enter either a Zoom meeting or Google Hangout, and either put your company name, put the services that you offer, so that way people who are actually in the virtual event with you can kind of see already what it is that you do, or get an idea of what it is that you do, and they can organically connect with you in that way. Because now we're in a space where we can't really go up to people and, you know, shake their hand and just say, hey, like, what do you do? So it's harder to have those one-on-one conversations through virtual events. But there's minor adjustments that you can make in order to get people to want to connect with you either after the event or offline. So using that tip, for example, my name today is my full name, and I also have my organization's name, and I put the website so that if any of you are interested in checking out who Queen's Company is and what we do, the website is literally right there, so you guys can just copy and paste and check it out. And if you want to connect with me, you can do that there as well too. And another thing that I love about virtual events is that there's no capacity to the amount of people that can join. So when we're used to in-person events, sometimes they can be more intimate, sometimes they can be larger. But one thing that can also be intimidating about virtual events is that, you know, it's just harder to connect with people. So while the possibilities are greater, it's a little bit harder to navigate as well too. But if you don't want to attend virtual events, consider hosting your own. And this is very important because it's still it's still crucial that we all remain social at this time. And if you still want to meet new people without having to go to an event that has a virtual event that has 50 plus people, host your own virtual happy hour, host your own virtual coffee meetup, and then just tell the friends that you're inviting to invite new friends as well too. So that way it can still be a more intimate setting, but you can also connect with new people and stay a little bit in your comfort zone, but also get out of your comfort zone by hosting the virtual event. And then my last tip is to really join online communities. So online communities have existed long before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And now I think their value has gone up dramatically because some of us live at home by ourselves. Some of us need that extra support in the moment. So there's a number of different Facebook groups. There are meetup groups where you're not necessarily meeting up in person, but you can network with each other on the meetup platform. And there's also a number of professional and business networking groups that are now going virtual and hosting virtual events or virtual hangouts. So it's a good place to meet like-minded individuals. And so as long as you find these groups and these online communities that are connected and aligned with your interests, you know you're going to walk into a space with other people who are like-minded. And so that is a great way to kind of ease into the remote networking world in a way that is closer to your comfort zone, but while you're still also getting out of your comfort zone. Okay, so that is basically my synopsis of tips that I have for you all today. And I will let Javiera take the floor. Oh, you're on mute.
Thanks. Yes. Thanks, Jessicah. Those are great tools. Love the part where you just said show love, which is true. We all need that now. Now we will be separating into breakout rooms for so please click join when the pop-up window appears. There will be a timer on the top right corner of your screen, and you will automatically rejoin the main group at the end of those 10 minutes. Your discussion question for this section is, how are you maximizing social platforms to expand your networks, and what did you learn? You will also post the discussion questions in the chat window, and we hope you also take the opportunity to get to know each other. Enjoy your conversations, and we'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Okay, so it looks like people are coming back. Just give me 1 second. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you were able to have great discussions, and please share any takeaways in the chat function. A lot of people are using it already, which is great. So next, we'll hear from Stacy Pierre. As I mentioned earlier, Stacy is passionate about connecting people to opportunities. She'll provide us with another 10 minutes of inspiration before our next breakout. So take it away, Stacy.
Thank you, Javiera. It's so inspirational. Wow, this is great. And so I hope that you do use the chat function to talk about your breakout room and the breakout experience, because I'd love to see that. And I know other people on this webinar would as well. And so I have to tell you that working on planning this session with Jessicah was such a pleasure, just because I learned so much from her, just as you did in the beginning of the session. And so this, as Jessicah let us know, there's networking in the new normal, how we're going about things now, right? But in fact, there are old adages that still apply. And so many of you have probably heard this: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And for me, it's real. I actually keep this by my side as I'm doing work to remind me the importance of how is it that we want to go together. And so partly what I'm going to draw on is some of what we know from the research in terms of the power of networks. And one of the big things that networks allow us to do is to welcome and learn from diverse perspectives. So we can actually get caught up in connecting with people who are just like us because it's more comfortable. But this is now more than ever a time to welcome diverse perspectives. And so this allows us to get into different spaces. It allows us to have different thoughts, to get all this different information that might help us in terms of how we're actually doing our work. And so the importance of paying attention to diverse perspectives, to gaining from diversity, it couldn't be more important now. And so the other thing that I think that networks can do, so there's one thing of welcoming, the other thing that they can do is challenge. And so we have, even before COVID-19, we have different behaviors that kind of characterize how we network. And so one is being a turtle or turtling. And with that, it means that you kind of you have a tight network of people who are like you just around you. It's a very, very dense network, and it's what allows you, what feels comfortable to you is this very tight network, like a turtle, right? And so that's one thing. The other behavior is acting like a butterfly. So it's flitting from place to place or having multiple networks, which is powerful in its own way because it gives us access to lots of different support. But those can be challenging network behaviors, particularly as we move into this virtual arena. And what the turtling behavior can happen is that you don't get information from people that you might need. You kind of go into a shell, and that can be challenging in terms of how we're living now. If you go into that shell, there can be isolation, right? And so how is it that we might turtle and how that can get in our way? Being a butterfly also has its challenges because it can allow you, it might encourage you to lose focus. You might, because you're going from network to network to network, there may be a lack of focus. Not to tell you that somebody who, my own style is more of a butterfly, it's tiring. It's tiring to go from all those different networks to bring in what it is that you need to know. And again, it might lose focus. So how is it that you think about whether or not you're a turtle or whether or not you're a butterfly, and what do you do to make sure that neither one of those network behaviors and network tendencies gets in your way? So Jessicah talked about, these different ways that you can reach out and that you can use networking skills to broaden your community and to, particularly if you're an introvert, to build stronger connections. And as we were talking, as the planning group was talking, I was like, what about how do you maintain yourself? We're always kind of with networking, looking out and thinking about how we can move out. But as important and not as much talked about is how is it that you maintain yourself? And so, there are all these ways that you can do this. Let me be clear. This is not rocket science. It's not new. You already know this. What we're doing in this session is reminding you and helping to bring these things to the fore just so that they're there, right? So you're like, I thought about that. Or, that's something that I could do, right? So again, reminding you, you all are brilliant. It's not that you don't know these things already. Okay, so how are you taking care of yourself? I don't know about you, but I am on the internet. I'm getting videos, I'm getting texts from people, and some of them are hilarious. So how is it that you laugh? How is it that you enjoy those emails and videos that are out there and you just enjoy yourself there? How is it that you meditate? Do you tap into a source to hold your soul? I don't know what you all do, but I have this book. It's called The Book of Awakening. Look, it's worn, and I have my owl of wisdom here. And I try to read this book every day to start off with it because it's short, but it has these real nuggets of wisdom, and it's just soothing to me. So what is the way that you meditate? What is the way that you soothe yourself in these times of rapid change and also stress? How do you avoid, right, that we can become saturated, or there can be Zoom traffic, or don't tell anybody I said this, but you could get Zoom butt from sitting in your chair all the time, or you could just get Zoom fatigue, right? And so all these things, Zoom traffic, Zoom fatigue, Zoom derriere, if we want to be more polite about how we say this, that you can get saturated and that we know actually you come to a point where getting more and more means that you've reached your break-even point and it's actually no longer beneficial. So how do you make sure that you don't get saturated? Sleep. It's that rare opportunity that we get to rest, to take care of ourselves. And guess what? I was looking this up. It says something like 1 in 3 people do not get enough sleep, right? And it could be more, that could be updated, but get more rest, actually sleep longer, right? And we have that opportunity. I don't know about you, but I am cleaning like crazy. So the chance to declutter, the chance to organize space, this might seem trite, but actually I find that now that I've organized my office, I feel more productive. I'm able to do that. And I'm able to get work done better. So how is it that you organize your space? And you might find things in cleaning out my office. I found a letter from 1989 that was my acceptance letter to University of Michigan, Go Blue. Right. Okay. So clean. It gives you this chance to organize space and to find things. And finally, reconnect. And Jessicah talked at length about this. So take that opportunity to strengthen what we would call a network theory, a tie or a relationship. I have to tell you that right now I am playing Words with Friends with one of my friends from high school who I haven't talked to in over 20 years. But I'm beating him right now. So, hey. And so these are the things that I would suggest is how do you maintain yourself? Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our moderator because there's so much I want to hear from you now. Stop sharing. There we go. And thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. That was incredible perspective. Now, we will split into breakout rooms. We'll go quickly so you have time. You will see a pop-up window shortly, so please join and you'll return to breakout rooms for 10 minutes. And your discussion question is, how do you center yourself to put your best foot forward to building genuine connections? So people are coming back. Just waiting, I think, slowly. Okay. So we will start our Q&A. So, well, welcome everyone. I hope you were able to have some great practice and discussions. So please, again, share any takeaways or questions in the chat function. And while you're all doing that, we'll start our Q&A. And I'll start with a question I have. So for both of you, Stacy and Jessicah, what do you find is the most energizing thing about networking? And you can, whoever would like to go first.
I don't mind going first. I think the most amazing thing that I find about networking, I always have led that. So I'm a huge extrovert. And as you said, when you introduced me, I love connecting people to opportunities. And so as a faculty member, I always want to share what we know from the research, but then have people get it. And then when, and partly getting it, when you share a concept and people aha, they get that eye glint where they can get it. And then I want to see how you use it. So then how do you take it from our conversation or our classroom and then go out and use it? And so that to me is a form of networking where I share one thing, it goes to one person, they get that aha glint in their eye, and then they go out and use it. I love that.
I love that too, Stacy. For me, I think it's a lot of the storytelling that's able to be done because I feel like our stories are what make us unique, but it's also what brings us together. And so I love meeting people where I would assume that we have nothing in common. And then in conversation, we have so much in common. And it's just really cool to just break down that initial barrier and just get real and get personal for a second. I'm the type of person, if I meet you for the first time, I want to give you a hug. So I'm struggling at the moment right now. I can't hug anybody. I can't see anybody. So it's definitely hard. But the storytelling aspect is one that can get transformed to the digital and remote space as well too, which I'm grateful for, that I can still have these authentic and genuine connections with people based off of our life experiences.
Yeah, great. I can definitely relate to both of those as an educator, so thank you. We had a question from earlier, and can you give some LinkedIn must-haves that help you network?
Yes, absolutely. And so I talked about updating your profile. And while that seems like a very simple task, I feel like LinkedIn updates its platform like every 2 weeks and they're asking me for new information. Like, well, where did you go to kindergarten? And I'm like, oh, snap, I don't remember. So make sure you're filling out a lot of these cool little these little like smaller areas of your profile that may not necessarily be like, I started a new business today, but it talks about some awards that you may have received, some certifications that you may have done. And also ask people for recommendations. I think that's an underrated aspect of LinkedIn. Honestly, I don't have any recommendations on my page, so I'm basically giving my own self advice right now because I've worked with a lot of great people on a lot of cool projects, but my LinkedIn doesn't necessarily communicate that. And then another great tip is to update your headline on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people, well, LinkedIn automatically asks if you want to just use your professional title as your LinkedIn title, but like feel free to get creative on there. Like, if you like birds, like you could say like bird loving teacher. That's obviously not, that's kind of weird, but like, in a cooler way, to just show some personality. Cause I think LinkedIn can seem a little bit stuffy sometimes, but it can be a really cool, fun and valuable platform. And then also one thing I love when people do is they write articles on LinkedIn. And it doesn't have to be like an article where you're sharing your expertise, but it could be an article about an experience that you've had, or, a way to kind of like journal how you're managing through this moment. And that's like a great way to build community. People comment on your posts, people share it. It's kind of easier to go viral on LinkedIn than all of the other platforms. So don't forget to just post there and share important content, ask people for recommendations. And I feel like the messaging feature, I get a lot of spam there. So if you want to connect with someone on LinkedIn and you guys have become friends, maybe messaging might not be the first initial thing that you do. Maybe it's commenting on a post and then following up with a message, because I get a ton of messages and I don't check them very often. So that's just another tip as well too.
Awesome, thank you. I like that, commenting and then sending a message as a follow-up. That makes total sense. Someone asked, Stacy, maybe you can answer this. They are an extrovert who is also experiencing Zoom fatigue. What tips do you have for keeping up with people while working through Zoom fatigue?
So it's, you know, so one of the things that I do is actually I get on the phone. I'm using FaceTime. I have two granddaughters in North Carolina, and I swear I see them more now than I did before COVID, because we FaceTime, and they know how to dance. They sing to me. There are all these different things that through FaceTime we're seeing that. I mean, the other thing that I do is to avoid Zoom fatigue is I just sit with myself for a while. So I start off the day with, I was sharing with the breakout room that I got to spend time with. So I start off the day with the list of things that I want to get done. And the first three things that are on the list I've already done, so I can cross them off and feel like accomplished. And then I make sure that I get out for walks, keeping safe social distance, but trying to make sure that I give myself space and time. And when I do these things, sometimes the Zoom fatigue means you just need to stop. You need to stop, get up and stretch, get up and do something, because I don't know about you, I'll have meetings from 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., just straight sitting in your chair. And that's part of what gives me Zoom fatigue and Zoom derriere, is to get up and spend time with myself, starting with that book of awakening, making sure that I spend time with people I love, doing FaceTime, doing all these different things, sharing stuff. That's really important.
Awesome, great. Just check. So just to close up, we have 2 minutes left. Jessicah and Stacy, would you like to give any last word of advice as we wrap this up?
I think I would just go back to to my soothing this kind of memento that I keep by my side as I'm working, as I stop, and if I'm getting stressed, I soothe myself by doing this. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And how do we go together? How is it that even in this time of social distancing, even in this time of masks and everything, how do we still go together? That will be my words.
Awesome.
My last word of advice would be yourself. Be comfortable with who you are. I really like how Stacy talked about how do we keep ourselves grounded in this moment, because, you know, depending on how you feel and the energy that you're giving off, that's what you'll give off to the other person as well too. So if you're not in the mood to talk, that's okay. You don't have to force yourself to be social, but in the moments when you do want to be social, like, reach out. There's a lot of people who are feeling the same ways that we are at this time. A lot of people are a lot more understanding. So take care of yourself. And if you are networking with new people or current staff, like, don't be afraid to be honest about where you are and how you feel, because they might feel the same way.
Great, thank you. That was great. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but it has been so much fun gaining insight on how to expand their network remotely. And I know I'll be walking away with a couple of takeaways. Love taking care of yourself to give out the best when you're networking. I think that's super important. I also want to encourage you to connect with a participant you met during this session for maybe a virtual coffee, or talk about whether you're a turtle or a butterfly and talk about those challenges. Before we close, I just want to highlight that the Boston Chamber of Commerce has a packed digital calendar. Every Friday, you will find skill-based webinars as a part of the Skills Up series. And next week is Coaching Your Team Through Crisis. You can learn more by going to bostonchamber.com and for signing up for their newsletter or following them on social media. So once again, thank you all for joining and have a good Friday and weekend. Bye, everyone.